everyone, and welcome to the December edition of the O'Neill 100. I'm Matt Clark, the director here at the library, and I'd just like to start by thanking everybody for being with us tonight. About a year ago now, Stewart came to me and put forth the idea of doing an entire year of O'Neill performances, one a month, and I was very optimistic, but I, at times at first, had my doubts that we would get ourselves through all 12 months here. But I can honestly say that after that very first performance in January, just the level of professionalism and effort that was brought forth by Stewart and the actors, and the level of interest and support from the community, combined, I had no doubt that we were going to be just fine, and that we really had something special on our hands. So, yeah, here we are a whole year later, but it's hard to believe that we've been through 12 months of this, 11 performances. We had one hiatus month for the Tennessee Williams Festival, which was, I think, perfectly reasonable, but it's really been a great ride, and I just wanted to really start off with expressing my gratitude, not only from myself, but from the library, our staff, our board of trustees, to you, the audience, to the actors that contributed their own time and their own effort to this every month, and obviously to Stewart for bringing it all together. So let's give him a really something special here, and I think we can all agree theater is alive and well in Provincetown. More specifically on tonight, for our grand finale, we have a reading of Hughie, which was written in 1942 by O'Neill and premiered in Sweden in 1958. Features a cast of only two. We've seen some bigger groups up here, some smaller ones. Tonight we have two, and Stewart will be reading stage direction. I would also like to backtrack just a little bit to the success of the series and the impact it's had, and encourage everyone to try to look up the Winter 2016 newsletter from the International O'Neill Society. They wrote a shining review of what's been going on here, complete with pictures and cast members, and just a really, really great update for anyone in Provincetown who's been a part of the series or outside and was wondering what we've been up to out here at Land's End. So really appreciative to that group for their review and publicizing our work here. One last thing, if you are interested in any of the previous performances, they are all available on our YouTube channel, which you can access just by going to youtube.com or through the library website. But we've worked with PTV, and we're really grateful to them for all the help that we've had with filming equipment and editing help. But yeah, all 11 installments of the O'Neill series in full are available on there. So if there's any performances that you were a part of or you had a personal favorite, feel free to go on there and kind of relive that moment. So as usual, I have done my fair share of talking, and I will turn it over to Provincetown's own Mr. Stewart M. Derrick.
Thank you for coming. I'm just curious, how many people are familiar with this play? Not a lot. You're in for a real treat. This is a magnificent play. It's only 50 minutes long, so it's not, one of O'Neill's marathon 4 or 5 hour ones. But it was, as Matt said, it was written in 1942. It debuted in Sweden in 1958. It was not until 1964 that the American premiere on Broadway featured Jason Robards. Since then, there have been a number of famous Hughie's. Hughie is not actually a character in the play. The character in question is Erie Smith, and Al Pacino, who is on the cover of our program, was a famous Hughie, as well as Bette Gazzara. Burgess Meredith did it in England, and most recently Forrest Whitaker did it this past year in honor of the 100th anniversary of Eugene O'Neill, which we are all celebrating nationwide. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background on this play. It was written in 1942 as a proposed part of 8 short plays that O'Neill was going to call By Way of Obit. It was the second to the last play that he wrote. It was right after Long Day's Journey into Night and right before Moon for the Misbegotten. And he had thought of this idea of doing 8 short plays about someone who had passed away. And the scheme was that a person would come on stage and do essentially a monologue talking about the dead person to another party who acted as a passive listener. And this is where it gets really interesting and where actually Matt was not quite correct. Usually when I'm in these readings, I'm in the far corner there reading the directions, because O'Neill was famous for his intricate, like, pages and pages of directions, and like George Bernard Shaw was in England. Here, interestingly enough, this is how ambitious and experimental this play was. The stage directions become part of the play. And that's one of the reasons it's so hard to perform, as you will see, because what happens is, if you do it as a monologue, you miss these intricate stage directions that after a while start taking a life of their own, and the night clerk, who is supposed to be the passive listener, suddenly starts speaking through the stage directions. And because of that, it is difficult to perform with that kind of configuration. I've seen it done. It was done here in 1999 or 98 with the former Provincetown Repertory Theater, and they tried to solve that problem by having Hughie and the night clerk on stage, and when the interior monologue of the night clerk began, they projected it on film. That was one way to solve it. But O'Neill scholars really think that this was meant to be read rather than performed, which is a perfect way of doing, which is one of the reasons I picked it tonight. Also because it's a really brilliant play. It just is. When Pauline and Bill and I were rehearsing it, we were like going, oh my gosh, this is really good. A little background more on the setting of the play. He wrote it. It takes place in 1928 in a very different New York from now and a very different New York from 1942. It was during Prohibition, and doing some background on this, I didn't realize that Prohibition was I thought it was just a couple of years. It was actually from 1920 to 1933. It was 13 years. Mm-hmm. It was the era of speakeasies and rum running and colorful criminals, and they're mentioned all here in the script. I gave you a glossary handout because there's a lot of archaic language and lingo, and you will, towards the end of the play, the night clerk will start talking about someone named Roston, who was a real person. He was a gangster, and he was friends with who are they now? Some of the big names of that era who were gangsters here in New York City, and he was, as they all were, he was a bootlegger, and he also was, like so many of them, was finally crossed the mob and he was hit. But he was one of the biggest gangsters in New York at the time, and look him up. If you look him up on the internet, you'll see a lot about him. I just want to say that after the show is over, we're going to have a little reception. I ask 2 things of you. This is a very intense play. Please make sure all your cell phones are off, not to interrupt the actors. And second of all, please wait for your refreshments until after the play is over. It goes by very fast. And I wanted to mention also too, we have been doing a play every month in honor of Eugene O'Neill's 100th anniversary. Is everybody aware of why we celebrate his anniversary here in Provincetown? Because this is where he began as a playwright. And it was 100 years ago, in July 1916, that he debuted as a playwright here in Provincetown. And most people, theater historians and scholars in this country, consider that to be the start of modern American drama, which is why it is so important that we celebrate him and honor him in this tiny little town that offered so much to the world. And I was very pleased to be able to put this together. I can't thank the library and Matt Clark enough. And I can't thank my actors enough who have appeared. I figure we use close to 45 to 50 actors over the course of a year. And we have a lot in the audience tonight. And I would like them to stand up and be acknowledged, please. Come on. Melanie Clark, Katie Clark, and Keith Bradley, Diane Hamilton, who passed out your programs. And another person who was very integral in all of this, we actually went out in other directions to galleries and to museums, and we had a Marc. Oh, this was not connected with the O'Neill 100 series. It was connected with the anniversary of his 100th anniversary. Jay Critchley wrote a brand new play that was just fabulous, and Jay is one of our great local playwrights, and it was O'Neill meets Padraig Pearson in 1916 in the Irish Rebellion, and it was done at Debbie Naldoni's Amp Gallery, and Debbie is right there, and she should stand and take up for being part of this whole thing. All right, this is a great play. I'm so pleased that we're doing this, and afterwards, please hang around and meet the actors, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them afterwards. Hughie by Eugene O'Neill. The characters are Erie Smith, a teller of tales, and a night clerk. The scene is the desk in a section of lobby of a small hotel on a west side street in midtown New York. It is between 3 and 4 a.m. of a day in the summer of 1928. It is one of those hotels built in the decade 1900 to 1910 on the side streets of the Great Wide Way sector, which began as respectable second class but soon were forced to deteriorate in order to survive. Following the First World War and Prohibition, it had given up all pretense of respectability. And now, during Prohibition, is anything a paying guest wants it to be, a third-class dump, catering to the catch-as-catch-can trade. But still, in all, it does not prosper. It has not shared in the great hollow boom of the 20s, which, and this is not part of the directions, it's 1928, and the next year, of course, is the Great Depression begins. So O'Neill here is ironically foreshadowing that. The everlasting opulence of the new economic law has overlooked this small hotel. It manages to keep running by cutting the overhead for service, repairs, and cleanliness to a minimum. There is a desk facing along a section of a seedy lobby with shabby chairs. The street entrance is off stage. Behind the desk are a telephone switchboard and the operator's stool. The usual numbered tiers of mailboxes and the desk, and above them, a clock. The night clerk sits on the stool facing front, his back to the switchboard. There is nothing to do. It is 3 a.m. in the morning. He is not thinking, he is not sleepy, he simply droops and stares acquiescently at nothing. It would be discouraging to glance at the clock. He knows there are several hours to go before his shift is over. Anyway, he does not need to look at clocks. He has been a night clerk in New York City hotels so long he can tell time by the sounds on the street. Footsteps begin to echo in the deserted lobby as someone comes in from the street. The night clerk rises wearily. His eyes remain empty, but his gummy lips part automatically in a welcoming. The patron, as always, right grimace intended as a smile. Erie Smith enters and approaches the desk. He is around the same age as the clerk and has the same pasty, perspiry, nightlife complexion. But there the resemblance ends. In a manner, he is consciously a Broadway sport and a wise guy, the type of small fry gambler and horse player living hand to mouth on the fringe of the rackets, infesting corners, doorways, cheap restaurants, the bars of minor speakeasies. Erie Smith and his kind imagine they are in the real now. cynical oracles of the one true grapevine. Erie usually speaks in a low, guarded tone, his droop-lidded eyes suspiciously wary of non-existent eavesdroppers. His face is set in the prescribed pattern of gambler's deadpan. His small, pursy mouth is always crooked in the cynical leer of one who possesses superior inside information, and his shifty once-over glances never miss the price tags he detects on everything and everybody. Yet there is something phony about his characterization of himself, some sentimental softness behind it which doesn't belong in the hard-boiled picture. Erie avoids looking at the night clerk as if he resented him.
Key.
The night clerk gropes with his memory.
Oh, forgot you ain't seen me before. Erie Smith's the name. I'm an old-timer in this flea bag, 492.
In a tone of one who is wearily relieved when he does not have to remember anything, the night clerk plucks out the key.
492, yes, sir.
Taking the key, Erie gives the clerk the once-over. He appears not unfavorably impressed, but his tone still holds resentment.
How long you been on the job? 4 or 5 days, huh? I've been often a drunk. Come to now, though. Tapering off. Well, I'm glad they fired that young squirt they took on when Hughie got sick. Them fresh-wise punks. Wouldn't tell him nothing. Pleased to meet you, pal. Hope you stick around.
Glad to know you, Mr. Smith.
What's your name?
As if he had forgotten, because what did it matter anyway?
Hughes. Charles Hughes.
Huh? Hughes? Say, is that on the level?
Charlie Hughes.
Well, I'll be damned. What the hell you know about that? Say, now that I notice, you don't look like Hughie, but you remind me of him somehow. You ain't any by chance related?
You mean to the Hughes who had this job so long and died recently? No, sir. No relation.
No, that's right. You had told me you didn't have no relations left. Except his wife and kids, of course. Yeah. Poor guy croaked last week. His funeral was what started me off on a bet. Oh, some drunk. I don't go off on one often. It's bum and dope in my book. That guy gets careless. Gabs about things he knows, and when he comes to, he's liable to find those guys who feel it would be easier if he wasn't around no more. That's the trouble with knowing things. Take my tip, pal. Don't ever know nothing. Be a sap and stay healthy.
His manner has become secretive, with sinister undertones, but the night clerk doesn't notice this. Long experience with guests who stop at his desk in the small hours to talk about themselves has given the night clerk a foolproof technique of self-defense. He appears to listen with agreeable submissiveness and be impressed, but his mind is blank, and he doesn't hear unless a direct question is put to him, and sometimes not even then. Erie thinks he is impressed.
Well, I always keep my noggin working. Booze or no booze, I'm no sucker. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, some drunk. Oh, I sure hate the high spots. You should have seen the doll I made night before last. Oh, and did she take me to the cleaners? I'm a sucker for blondes. You are married, ain't you?
Long ago, the night clerk gave up caring whether questions were personal or not.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd lay 10 to 1 on it. You had that old look. Like Hughie had. Maybe that's the resemblance. Kids too, I bet.
Yes, sir. 3.
Hey, you're worse off than Hughie was. He only had 2. 3, huh? Well, that's what comes of being careless.
He laughs, the night clerk smiles. He had been a little offended when a guest first made that crack. Must have been about 10 years or so ago. Yes, Eddie, the oldest, is 11 now. Or is it 12? Erie goes on with good-natured tolerance.
Well, I suppose marriage ain't such a bum racket if you're made for it. Hughie didn't seem to mind it much. Although if you want mine to go down, his wife is a bum. Spades. Oh, I don't mean cheating. Her puss and figure. She'd never make no one except she waited a blind asylum.
The night clerk feels that he has been standing a long time and his feet are beginning to ache, and he wishes number 492 would stop talking and go to bed so he can sit down again and listen to the noises in the street and think about nothing. Erie gives him an amused, condescending glance.
How old are you? Wait. Let me guess. You look 50 or over, but a late 10 to 1. You're 43, maybe 44.
I'm 43. Or maybe it is 44.
I win! I can sure that till the turn on ages, buddy. You ought to see the dolls get sored up when I work it on them. You're like Hughie. He looked like he'd never see 50 again, and he was only 43. Me? I'm 45. Never think it, would you? Most of the dames don't think I've even hit 40 yet.
The night clerk shifts his position so he can lean more on the desk. Maybe those shoes he sees advertised for fallen arches, but they cost $8. So that's out. Get a pair when he goes to heaven, maybe. Erie is sizing him up with another cynical, friendly glance.
Make another bet about you. Born and raised in the sticks, wasn't ya?
I come originally from Saginaw, Michigan. But I've lived here in the big town for so long, I consider myself a New Yorker now.
This is a long speech for the night clerk, and he wonders sadly why he took the trouble to make it.
I don't deserve no medal for picking that one. Nearly every guy I know on the big stem, and I know most of them, hails from the sticks. Take me. You never guess it, but I was dragged up in Erie, PA. Ain't that a knockout? Erie, PA. That's how I got my moniker. No one calls me nothing but Erie. You better call me Erie too, pal. Well, I won't know who you're talking to.
All right, Erie.
Attaboy. Here's another knockout. Smith is my real name. Broadway guy like me named Smith. And it's my real name. Ain't that a knockout?
He explains this carefully so there will be no misunderstanding.
I don't know. I don't remember nothing about Erie, PA. Understand? Born to some punk burg. After grammar school, my old man, he put me to work in his store, dealing out groceries. Some punk job. I stuck it till I was 18 before I took the run-out powder.
The night clerk seems turned into a drooping waxwork draped across the desk. This is what he used to drip before he perfected his technique of not listening, the guest's story of his life. He fixes his mind on his aching feet and Erie chuckles.
Speaking of marriage, that was the reason I ducked. Doll nearly had me hooked for the old shotgun ceremony. Closest I ever come to being a sucker. This doll in Erie, Daisy's her name. One of them dumb, wide-eyed dolls. All the guys gave her a play. Then one day she wakes up and she finds she's going to have a kid. I never figured she meant to frame me in particular, the way I figured it. She didn't have no idea who. So she holds a lottery all by herself. Put about 1,000 guys' names in a hat, all she could remember, and drew out one. And I was it. And then she told her ma. And her ma told her pa, and her pa came around looking for me. But I was no fall guy, even in them days. I took it on the lamb. For Saratoga. To look the bangtails over. I started to be a horse player, even back in Erie. I've never seen a track. Been one ever since. I ain't doing so bad, pal. Made some killings in my time, and the gang still gab about it. Been in the big bucks only once, and I will be again. I've had tough breaks too, but what the hell, I always get by. The horses won't run for me, and there's draw, stud. When then they're bad, there's a crap game. When they're all bad, there's always bucks to be picked up for little errands I ain't talking about. So they give a guy who can keep his clam shut. Oh, I get along, buddy. I get along.
He waits for approving assent from the night clerk, but the latter is not hearing so intently. He misses his cue until the expectant silence crashes his ears.
Yes, sir.
Sorry if I'm keeping you awake, sport. Hughie was a wide awake guy. He was always waiting for me to roll in. He'd say, "Hello, Erie. How the bagtails treating you?" Or, "How's luck?" Or, "Did you make the old bones behave?" I'd tell him how I'd done. He'd ask, "What's new along the big stem?" And I'd tell him the latest off the grapevine. He used to have me a laugh to hear old Hughie cracking like a sport. In all the years I'd known him, he never bet a buck on nothing. What ain't his fault? He'd have taken a chance, but how could he with his wife keeping cases on every nickel of his salary? I showed him lots of ways he could cross her up, but he was too scared. Biggest knock on was when he gave me about dames. He'd crack, "What? No blonde tonight, Erie? You must be slipping." Geez, you never seen a guy more bashful with a doll around than Hughie was. I used to introduce him to the tramps I'd drag here with me. I'd wise them up to get him along and pretend they'd fall for him. In 2 minutes they'd have him hanging on the ropes. His face would be red, and he looked like he wanted to crawl under the desk and hide. Some of them dolls was raw babies. They'd make some pretty raw propositions. He stuttered like he was paralyzed. But he ate it up, just the same. He was tickled pink. I used to hope maybe I could get him to get some nerve up and do a little cheating. I offered to fix him up with one of my dolls. Hell, I got plenty. Wouldn't have minded. I tell him, "Just let that wife of yours know you're cheating. She'll have some respect for you." But he was too scared. Some queens I brought here in my time, brother. Frails from the Follies, or the Scandals. Oh, the Frolics. They knock your eyes out. And I can still make them. You watch. I ain't slipping.
He looks at the night clerk expecting reassurance, but the clerk's mind has slipped away to the clanging bounce of garbage cans in the outer night. The night clerk is thinking,
The job I'd like. I'd bang those cans louder than they do. I'd wake up the whole damn city.
Erie mutters disgustedly to himself.
Jesus. Tummy.
He makes a move in the direction of the elevator gloomily.
Might as well hit the hay, I guess.
The night clerk comes too, with the nearest approach to feeling he has shown in many a long night, approvingly.
Good night, Mr. Smith. I hope you have a good rest.
But Erie stops, glancing around the deserted lobby with forlorn distaste, jiggling the room key in his hand.
Crummy dump. What I come back for? I should have stayed up drunk. You'd never guess it, buddy. When I first come in here, this was a classy hotel. Clean. Can you believe it? I've been camping here on and off for 15 years. I have a good notion to move out. It ain't the same place since Hughie was took to the hospital. Oh, hell with going to bed. I'll just lie there
He
worrying.
turns back to the desk. The clerk's face would express despair, But the last time he was able to feel despair was back around World War days, when the cost of living got so high and he was out of a job for 3 months. Erie leans on the desk in a dejected, confidential tone.
Believe me, brother, I've never been a guy to worry, but this time I'm on the spot where I got to, if I ain't a sap.
The night clerk, in a vague tone of a corpse, which admits it once overheard a favorable rumor about life, responds,
That's too bad, Mr. Smith. But they say most of the things we worry about never happen.
The night clerk's mind escapes to the street again to play bouncing cans with the garbage men.
This thing happens, pal. I ain't won a bet at nothing since Hughie was took to the hospital. I'm jinxed. And that ain't all. Oh, but the hell with it. You're right at that. Something always turns up for me. I was born lucky. I ain't worried. Just moaning low. Hell, who don't when after getting out of a drunk? You know what it is. The Brooklyn boys march over the bridge with bloodhounds to hunt you down. And I'm still carrying the torch for Hughie. His checking out was a real KO for me. Damn if I know why. Lots of guys I've been pals with, in a way, croaked from booze or something, or got rubbed out. But I always took it as part of the game. Hell, we all got a croak. Here today, gone tomorrow. So what's the good of beefing? When a guy's dead, he's dead. He don't give a damn. So why should anybody else?
But this fatalistic philosophy is no comfort in Erie sighs.
I miss Hughie, I guess. I like him a lot.
Again, he explains carefully, so there will be no misunderstanding.
Not that I was ever real pals with him, you understand? No, he didn't run in my class. He didn't know none of the answers. He was just a sucker. I'm sure sorry he's gone. You missed a lot not knowing Hughie, pal. He was sure one grand little guy.
Erie stares at the lobby floor. The night clerk regards him with vacant, bulging eyes full of a vague envy for the blind. The garbage men have gone their predestined way. Time is that much older. The clerk's mind remains in the street to greet the noise of a far-off L train. Its approach is pleasantly like a memory of hope. Then it roars and rattles past the nearby corner, and the noise pleasantly deafens memory. Then it recedes and dies. And there is something melancholy about that. But there is hope. Only so many L trains pass in one night, and each one passing leaves one less to pass. So the night recedes, too, until at last it must die and join all the other long nights in Nirvana, the big night of nights. And that's life.
What I always tell Jess when she nags me to worry about something. Now, that's life, isn't it? What can you do about it?
Erie sighs again, then turns to the clerk, his foolishly wary, wise guy eyes defenseless, his poker face as self-betraying as a hurt dog's, appealingly.
Say, you do remind me of Hughie somehow, pal. You got the same kind of look on your map.
But the clerk's mind is far away, attending the obsequies of night, and it takes some time to get back. Erie is hurt and says contemptuously,
I guess it's only that old night clerk look. There's one of them born every minute.
The night clerk's mind arrives just in time to catch this last comment with a bright grimace.
Yes, Mr. Smith. That's what Barnum said, and it certainly is true, isn't it?
Erie is grateful even for the sign of companionship, growls.
Nix on the Mr. Smith stuff, Charlie. There's one of them born every minute. Call me Erie, like I told you.
The night clerk responds automatically as his mind tiptoes into the night again.
All right, Erie.
Erie, encouraged, clacks his room key like a castanet.
Yeah, he was one grand little guy. All the same, like I said, he wasn't the kind of guy you ever figure a guy like me would take to. 'Cause he was a sucker, see? The kind of sap you take to the cleaners 1,000,000 times. And he never wise up that he was took. Why, night after night, just for a gag, I get him to shoot crap with me here on the desk with my dice. And he'd never ask once to give him the once-over. Can you beat that? Not that I'd ever ring any phonies on a pal. I ain't no heel. And anyway, I didn't need none to take Hughie because he never even made me knock him against nothing. Just a roll on the desk here. Boy, if they let me throw them that way in a real game, I'd be worth $10 million. You know, you would have thought Hughie would get wise. Something was out of order when no matter how much he'd win on a run of luck, like suckers sometimes have, I'd always take him to the cleaners in the end. But he never suspicioned nothing. All he'd say was, "Gosh, Erie, no wonder you took up gambling. You were born lucky." Can you beat that? Of course, like I said, it was only a gag. We'd play with real Jack just to make it look real. But it was all my Jack. He never had no Jack. His wife dealt him 4 bits a day for spending money. So I'd stake him at the start, half of what I got in chicken feet, I mean. We'd pretend a cent was a buck and a nickel was a fin and so on. Some big game. He got a kick out of it. He'd get all help. Gave me a kick too, especially when he'd say, "Gosh, Erie, I don't know. I don't wonder you never worry about money with your luck." That guy would believe anything. Of course, I'd stall him off when when the nights he wanted to shoot, and I'd never gone down a nickel. Oh, what laughs he used to hand me. He'd always call the horses the bang tails. Like he'd known them all his life. And he'd never even seen a racehorse. Not till I kidnapped him one day. Took him down to Belmont. Oh, what a kick he got out of that. I got scared he'd pass out for excitement. And he was doing no betting either. All he had was 4 bits. It's just the track. The crowd. And the horses got him. Mostly the horses. You know, it's funny how a dumb, simple guy like Hughie will all of a sudden get something right. He says, "They're the most beautiful things in the world, I think." And he wins. Oh, I tell you, pal, I'd rather sleep in the stall with old man or than make the whole goddamn follies. What do you think?
The night clerk's mind darts back from a cruising taxi and blinks bewilderingly in the light.
Say yes. Yes! I agree with you, Erie.
Yeah, I bet you've never even seen one back at the old fairgrounds at home in the sticks. I don't mean them kind of turtles. I mean a real horse.
The night clerk wonders what horses have to do with anything, or for that matter, what anything has to do with anything, then gives it up. Erie takes up his tail.
And what do you think happened the next night? Damned if Hughie didn't dig $2 out of his pants and try to slip him to me. "Let this ride on the nose of whatever horse you're betting on tomorrow," he told me. I got sore. "Nix!" I told him. "If you're gonna stop playing sucker and betting on horse races, you don't get no assist from me." Was that a laugh? Me advising a sucker not to bet when I spent all my life telling saps a story to make 'em bet. I said, "Where'd you get this dough? Out of the little woman's purse, huh? Well, what tell are you going to give her when you lose it? She'll start breaking up the furniture with you." "No," he says. "She'll just cry. That's worse, I said. No guy can beat that racket. I had a doll cry on me once in a restaurant full of people, till I had to promise her a diamond ring to sober her up. Well, anyway, Hughie sneaked the $2 back into the little woman's purse when he went home that morning, and that was the end of that. Boy Scouts got nothing on me, pal. When it comes to good deeds, that was one I done. It's too bad I can't remember no others.
Erie is well wound up now and goes on without noticing
You know-
that the night clerk's mind has left the premises in his sole custody.
I had Hughie sized up for a sap the first time I saw him. I just rolled in from Tijuana. Made a big killing down there. And I was lousy with Jack. Come all the way in a drawing room. And I wasn't lonely in it either. There was this blonde movie doll on the train, and I was lucky in them days. Used to follow the horses south every winter. Don't anymore. Sick with traveling. I ain't as lucky as I used to be. Anyway, this time I'm talking about, as soon as I hit this lobby, I see there's a new night clerk. While I'm signing up for the bridal suite, I make a bet with myself. He's never been nothing but a night clerk. And I win. First, he wouldn't open up. Not that he was cagey about gabbing too much, but like he couldn't think of nothing about himself worth saying. But after he'd seen me roll in here, the last one every night, and I'd stoop to kid him along and tell him the tale of what I won that day, he got friendly and talked. He come from a Kickburg upstate, graduated from high school, and he had a shot at different jobs in the old hometown, but couldn't make the grade until he took on as a night clerk in the hotel there. Then he made good, but he wasn't satisfied. Didn't like being only a night clerk where everybody knew him. He read somewhere, in the sucker's almanac, I guess, that all the guy had to do was come to the big town, and old man Success be waiting at Grand Central to give him the key to the city. What a gag that is. I even believed that once. No one could ever call me a sap. Well, anyway, he made the break and he come here, and the only job he could get was a night clerk. And he fell in love. Kidding himself he was. Got married. Met her on the subway. It stopped sudden, and he was jerked into him, and he put his arms around her, and they started talking. And poor boob never stood a chance. She was a salesgirl in some punk department store, and she was sick of standing on her dogs all day, and all the way home to Brooklyn, too. The way I figured it, knowing Hughie and dames, she proposed and said yes for him. And married him. And after that, of course, he never dared stop being a night clerk, even if he could. Maybe you think I ain't giving her a square shake. Maybe I ain't. She never gave me one. She put me down as a bad influence and let her chips ride. Oh, maybe Hughie couldn't have done no better. Dolls didn't call him no ride. Hughie and her seemed happy enough. The time he had me out to dinner in their flat. No, not happy. Made me contented. No, that's boosting it too. Resigned comes near. Each of them was giving each other a break by thinking, well, what more could I expect? How'd you and your little woman hit it off, brother?
The night clerk's mind has been counting the footfalls of the cop on the beat as they recede, sauntering longingly toward the dawn's release.
If only he'd shoot it out with a gunman some night. Nothing exciting has happened in any night I've ever lived through.
The night clerk stammers gropingly among the echoes of Erie's last words.
Oh, you mean my wife? Why, we get along all right, I guess.
Better lay off them headache pills, pal. First thing you know, some guy's gonna call you a dope.
But the night clerk cannot take this seriously. It is years since he cared what anyone called him. So many guests have called him so many things. The little woman has too. And of course he has himself. But that's all past. Is daybreak coming now? No, too early yet. You can tell by the sound of that surface car. It is still lost in the night, flat-wheeled and tired. Distant the car barn and far away the sleep. Erie, having soothed the resentment with his wisecrack, goes on with a friendly grin.
Well, keep hoping, pal. Hughie was as big a dope as you until I gave him some interest in life. That time you took me home to dinner? Oh, was that a knockout? It took him a hell of a while to get up the nerve to ask me. Sure, Hughie, I told him, I'd be tickled to death. I was thinking I'd rather be shot. For one thing, he lived in Brooklyn, and I'd rather take a trip to China. Another thing, I'm a guy who likes to eat what I order, and not when someone deals me. I had kids and a wife, and the family racket is out of my line. He looked so tickled, I couldn't welch on him. And it didn't work out so bad. Of course, what he called home was only a dump of a cheap flat. Still, it wasn't so bad for a change. His wife had done a lot of stuff to doll it up. Nothing with no class, you understand. Just cheap stuff to make it look comfortable. And his kids wasn't the gorillas I expected neither. No throwing spitballs in my soup or them kind of gags. They was quiet, like Hughie. I kind of liked them. After dinner, I started telling him a story about a race course a guy I knew owned once. I thought it was up to me to put out something, and kids like animal stories. And this one was true at that.
This old turtle never wins a race, but he was as foxy as 10 guys, a natural-born crook. The goddamnedest thief, he'd steal anything in his reach if it wasn't nailed down. Well, I didn't get far. Here his wife butts in and stopped me cold, told the kids it was bedtime and hustled them off like I was giving them the measles. He got my goat. I could have liked her a little. She'd have given me a chance. Not that she was nothing Ziegfeld would glorify. When you call her plain, you give her all the breaks. Oh, the hell with it. She tagged me as a bum, and seeing me made her sure she was right. You can bet she told Hughie never to invite me again. And he never did. He tried to apologize, but I shut him up quick. He says, Irma was brought up strict. She can't help being narrow-minded about gamblers. I said, what's it to me? I don't want to hear about your dame troubles. I got plenty of my own. Remember that doll I brought here night before last? She gives me an argument, and I promised her $10. I told her, listen, baby, I got a speech impairment, and maybe it sounded like 10, but it was 2, and that's all you get. Hell, I don't want to buy your soul. What would I do with it? Now she's peddling the news along Broadway. I'm a rat and a chiseler. And of course all the rats and chiselers believe her. Before she's through, I won't have a friend left. I switched the subject on you, see? On purpose. He never did beef about his wife to me again. Believe me, pal, I can stop guys that start telling me their family troubles.
The night clerk's mind has hopped an ambulance clanging down 6th Avenue and is asking without any curiosity,
Will he die, Doctor? Or isn't he lucky? I'm afraid not, but he'll have to be absolutely quiet for months and months. With a pretty nurse taking care of him? Probably not pretty. Well, anyway, I claim he's lucky. And now I must get back to the hotel. 492 won't go to bed and insists on telling me jokes. It must have been a joke because he's chuckling.
The night clerk laughs with a heartiness which has forgotten that heart is more than a word in it. Have a heart is an old expression.
That's a good one, Erie. That's the best one I've heard in a long time.
For a moment, Erie is so hurt and depressed he hasn't the spirit to make a sarcastic crack. He stares at the floor, twirling his room key, and says to himself,
Jesus. This sure is a dump. About as homey as a morgue.
he glances up at the clock.
Getting late. Better beat it up to my cell and grab some shut-eye.
He makes a move to detach himself from the desk, but fails and remains wearily glued to it. His eyes prowl the lobby and finally come to rest on the night clerk's glistening, sallow face. He summons up strength for a withering crack.
Why didn't you tell me you was thief, buddy? I know guys sensitive about them little afflictions, but I'll keep it confidential.
But the night clerk's mind is rushed out to follow the siren wail of a fire engine.
Fireman's life must be exciting.
His mind rides the engine and asks the fireman with disinterested eagerness,
Where's the fire? Is it a real good one this time? Has it a good start? Will it be big enough, do you think?
Erie examines his face, bitingly.
Take my tip, pal. No, never try to buy from a dope peddler. He'll tell you you had enough already.
The clerk's mind continues its dialogue with the fireman.
I mean, big enough to burn down the whole damn city? Sorry, brother, but there's no chance. There's too much stone and steel. There'd always be something left. Yes, I guess you're right. There's too much stone and steel. I wasn't really hoping anyway. Really doesn't matter to me.
Erie gives him up and again attempts to pry himself from the desk, twirling his key frantically as if it were a fetish which might set him free.
Well, me for the hay.
But he can't dislodge himself.
I wish Hughie was here. By God, if he was, I'd tell him a tale that would make his eyes pop. The bigger the story, the harder he'd fall. He was that kind of sap. He thought gambling was romantic. I guess he saw me as sort of a dream guy. Sort of guy he'd like to be if he could take a chance. I guess he sort of lived a double life, listening to me gabbing about hitting the high spots. Come to figure it, that he even cheated on his wife that way, using me and my dolls. No wonder he liked me, huh? The bigger I made myself, the more he lapped it up. I went easy on him at first. I didn't lie. Oh, not any more than a guy naturally does when he gabs about all the bets he wins and the dolls he's made. But I soon see he was crying for more. When a sucker wants more, you're a dope if you don't let him have it. Every tramp I made got to be a Follies doll. Hughie liked Follies dolls, or the scandals, or the frolics. He wanted me to be the chic of Araby, or something in any blonde to go round-heeled about. Well, I give him plenty of that, and I give him plenty of gambling tales. I explained my camping in this dump was because I don't want to waste my jack on nothing, but I can. It was like doped. I told him. Couldn't wait. He lapped that up. He liked to kid himself. I mixed up with a racket. He thought gangsters were romantic. So I fed him some baloney about hijacking I'd done once. I told him I knew all the big shots. Well, I do. Most of them say hello. Sometimes they say hello back. Who wouldn't know them, the hangs around Broadway and the joints? I just run errands for them sometimes because there's dough in it. But I'm cagey about getting in where it ain't healthy. Hughie wanted to think that me and Legs Diamond were old pals, so I gave him that too. I gave him anything he cried for. Don't get the wrong idea, pal. What I fed Hughie wasn't all lies. The tales about gambling wasn't. There were stories of big games and killings that really happened since I've been hanging around. Only I wasn't in on them like I made out.
except one or two from the way back, and when I had a run of bad luck and was in the bucks for a while and was took to the cleaners.
He stops to pay tribute of a side to the memory of brave days that were and that never were.
Yeah. Hughie lapped up my stories like they was duck soup or a beak full of heroin. I sure took him around with me in tales and showed him one hell of a time. And you know, it done me good too. In a way, sure. I get to seeing myself like he's seen me. Some nights I come back here without a buck, feeling lower than a snake's belly. And the first thing you know, I'd be lousy with Jack, betting on a grand on a race. Oh, I was wise, I was kidding myself, I ain't no sap. Oh, what the hell? Hughie loved it. And it didn't cost nobody nothing. And if every guy along Broadway who kids himself was to drop dead, there wouldn't be nobody left. Ain't it the truth, Charlie?
He again stares at the night clerk appealingly, forgetting past rebuffs. The clerk's face is taut with vacancy. His mind has been trying to fasten itself to some noise in the night, but a rare and threatening pause of silence has fallen on the city. And here he is, chained behind a hotel desk forever, awake when everyone else in the world is asleep, except room 492, and he won't go to bed. He's still talking, and there's no escape. The night clerk's glassy eyes stare through Erie's face, and he stammers deferentially.
Truth. I'm afraid I didn't get a... What's the truth?
Nothing, pal. Not a thing.
Erie's eyes fall to the floor. For a while, he is too defeated even to twirl his room key. The night clerk's mind still cannot make a getaway because the city remains silent, and the night vaguely reminds him of death, and he is vaguely frightened. And now that he remembers, his feet are giving him hell, but that's no excuse not to act as if the guest is always right.
I should have paid 492 more attention. After all, he is company. He is awake and alive. I should use him to help me live through the night. What's he been talking about? I must have caught some of it without meaning to.
The night clerk's forehead puckers perspiringly as he tries to remember. Erie begins talking again, but this time it is obviously aloud and to himself, without any hope of a listener.
I could tell by Erie's face before he went to the hospital it was through. Seeing the same look on guys' faces when they knew they was on the spot, just before the guys caught up with them. I went to see him twice in the hospital. First time, his wife was there. Gave me a dirty look. He crooked up a smile and said, "Hello, Erie. How the Bangtails treating you? I see he wants a big story to cheer him." But his wife butts in and says he's weak and he mustn't get excited. I felt like cracking weld. The docs in this dump got the right dope. Just leave him with you and he'll never get excited. Second time I went. Well, let me see him. That was near the end. Went to his funeral, too. There was nobody but a couple of his wife's relations. I feel sorry for her. She looked like she ought to be parked in a coffin, too. Kids were bawling. There wasn't no flowers, but a couple lousy wreaths. Would have been a punk showing for poor old Hughie. Hadn't been for my flower piece. That was some display, pal. It'll knock your eyes out. Sent me back $100, no kidding. A big horseshoe, red roses. I knew Hughie would want a horseshoe because it made him look like he was a horse player. And on the top, printed it, forgot-me-nots. It was a
Goodbye, old pal. He used like to kid himself he was my pal. But he wasn't that. Even if he was a sucker.
Erie pauses. His false poker face as nakedly forlorn as an organ grinder's monkey. Outside, the spell of abnormal quiet presses suffocatingly upon the street and enters the dirty, deserted lobby. The night clerk's mind cowers away from it. He cringes behind the desk, his feet aching like hell. There is only one possible escape. If his mind could only fasten onto something 492 has said.
What's he been talking about? A clerk should always be attentive. You even are duty-bound to laugh at a guest's smutty jokes, no matter how often you've heard them. That's the policy of the hotel. 492 has been gassing for hours. What's he been telling me? I must be slipping. Always before this, I've been able to hear without bothering to listen, but now when I need company, I've got it. Gambling. He said a lot about gambling. That's something I've always wanted to know more about, too. Maybe he's a professional gambler, like Arnold Rothstein.
The night clerk blurts out with an uncanny, almost lifelike eagerness.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Erie, but did I understand you to say you're a gambler by profession? Do you, by any chance, know the big shot, Arnold Rothstein?
But this time it is Erie who doesn't hear him. And the clerk's mind is now suddenly impervious to the threat of night and silence as it pursues an ideal of fame and glory within itself called Arnold Rothstein.
I wish Hughie was alive and kicking. I'd tell him I'd win 10 grand from the bookies. 10 grand at stud. And 10 grand in a crap game. I'd tell him I bought one of those Mercedes sports roadsters with nickel pipes sticking out of the hood. I'd tell him I'd laid 3 babes from the Follies, 2 blondes, and a brunette.
The night clerk dreams a rapt hero worship transfiguring his face.
Arnold Rothstein. He must be some guy. I read a story about him. He'll gamble for any limit on anything, and he always wins. The story said he wouldn't bother playing in a poker game unless the smallest bet you could make, 1 white chip, was $100. Christ, that's going some. I'd like to have the dough to get in on a game with him just once. The last pot, everybody would drop out but him and me. I'd say, okay, Arnold, the sky's the limit, and I'd raise him 5 grand, and he'd call. And I'd have a royal flush to his 4 aces. And then I'd say, okay, Arnold, I'm a good sport. I'll give you a break. I'll cut you, double or nothing. Just 1 cut. I want quick action for my dough. And I'd cut the ace of spades and win again.
The beatific vision swoons on the empty pools of the night clerk's eyes. He resembles a holy saint recently elected to paradise. Erie breaks the silence, bitterly resigned.
Hughie's better off. That. Being dead. He's got all the luck. He needn't do no worrying about nothing now. He's out of the racket. I mean, the whole goddamn racket. I mean, life.
The night clerk is kicked out of his dream with detached, pleasant acquiescence.
Yes, it is a goddamn racket when you stop to think, isn't it, 492? But we might as well make the best of it because, well, you can't burn it all down, can you? There's too much steel and stone. There'd always be something left to start it going again.
Say, what is this? What the hell are you talking about?
To be frank, I really don't. It's just something that came into my head.
Get it out of your head quick, Charlie. Some guy in uniform is gonna walk in here and with a butterfly net and catch you. Listen, pal. Maybe you guess I was kidding about the flower piece for Hughie costing $100. Well, I ain't. I didn't give a damn what it cost. It was up to me to give Hughie a big-time send-off because I knew nobody else would.
Well, I'm not doubting your word, Erie. You won the money gambling, I suppose. I mean, I beg your pardon if I'm mistaken, but You are a gambler, aren't you?
Yeah, sure. Only got the scratch to put up. What of it? I don't win that $100. I don't win a bet since Hughie was took to the hospital. I had to get down on my knees and beg every guy I know for a sawbuck here and a sawbuck there until I raised it.
The night clerk's mind is concentrated on the big ideal, insistently.
Do you by any chance know Arnold Rothstein?
Arnold? What's he got to do with it? He wouldn't loan a guy like me a nickel to save my grandmother from street walking.
And you do know him.
Sure, I know the bastard. Who don't on Broadway? He knows me when he wants to. He uses me to run errands when there ain't nobody else handy. Oh, but he ain't my trouble, pal. My trouble is some of these guys I put the bite on as dead wrong G's. And they expect to be paid back next Tuesday. Or else I'm out of luck. I have to take it on the lam, or I get beat up and maybe sent to the hospital.
Erie suddenly rouses himself, and there is something pathetically but genuinely gallant about him.
What the hell? I was wise in taking a chance. I always took a chance. And if I lose, I pay. And no welching. It was sure worth it to give Hughie the big send-off.
He pauses. The night clerk hasn't paid any attention except to his own dream. A question is trembling on the night clerk's parted lips, but before he can get it out, Erie goes on gloomily.
But even that ain't my big worry, Charlie. My big worry is the run of bad luck I've had since Hughie got took to the hospital. Not a win. That ain't natural. I've always been a lucky guy. Lucky enough to get by and pay up, I mean. I would never worry about owing guys like I owe them guys. I'd always know I'd make a win and fix it. Now I got a hunch, a lousy hunch. When I lost Hughie, I lost my luck. I mean, I lost the old confidence. He used to give me confidence.
He turns away from the desk.
No use gabbing here all night. You can't do me no good.
He starts towards the elevator.
Just a minute, Erie, if you don't mind. So, you're an old friend of Arnold Rothstein. Would you mind telling me if it's really true? When Arnold Rothstein plays poker, one white chip is $100?
Say, for Christ's sake! What's it to you?
He stops abruptly, staring probingly at the night clerk. There is a pause. Suddenly his face lights up with a saving revelation. He grins warmly and saunters confidently back to the desk.
Say, Charlie, why didn't you put me wise before you was interested in gambling? Hell, I got you all wrong, pal. I've been telling myself, this guy ain't like old Hughie. He ain't got no sporting blood. He's just a dope. Ah, now I see you're a right guy. Shake!
He shoves out his hand, which the clerk clasps with a limp pleasure. Erie goes on with gathering warmth and self-assurance.
That's the stuff. You and me will get along. I'll give you all the breaks. Like I give Hughie.
Thank you, Erie. Is it true, when Arnold Rothstein plays poker, one white chip...
Set you back $100, sure. Why not? Arnold's in the bucks, ain't he? And when you're in the bucks casino, there's chicken feed. I ought to know, pal. When I was in the bucks when Arnold was a piker. Why, one time down in New Orleans, I lit a cigar with a C note. Just for a gag, you understand. I was with a bunch of high-class dolls, and I wanted to see their eyes pop out, and believe me, they popped. After that, I could make them all at one time, or all together. Hell, I once won 20 grand in a single race. That's action. A good crap game is action, too. Hell, I've been in games where there was 100 grand in real folding money lying around the floor. That's traveling.
He darts a quick glance at the clerk's face and begins to hedge, warily. But he needn't. The clerk sees him now as the gambler in 492, the friend of Arnold Rothstein. And nothing is incredible. Erie goes on.
Of course, I wouldn't kid you.
I'm not in the bucks now. Not right this moment. You know how it is, Charlie. Down today and up tomorrow. I got some dough riding on the nose of a turtle on the 4th of Saratoga. I hear a story. He'll be so full of hop. If the jock can keep him from jumping over the grandstand, he'll win by a mile. So if I roll in here with a blonde that'll knock your eyes out, don't be surprised.
Oh, you can't surprise me in that way. I've been a night clerk in New York all my life, almost.
He tries out a wink himself.
I'll forget the house rules.
Yeah, manager wouldn't like it for you to remember something ain't even heard yet. How about shooting a little crap, Charlie? I mean, just for fun, like I used to do with Hughie. I know you can't afford taking no chances. I'll stake you, see? I got a couple bucks. You gotta use real jack, or it don't look real. It's all my jack, get it? You can't lose. I just want to show you how I'll take you to the cleaners. It'll give me confidence.
He has taken two $1 bills from his pocket.
Here you are.
He pushes most of it across to the clerk. He produces a pair of dice carelessly.
Want to give these dice the once over before we start?
What do you think I am? I know I can trust you.
You remind me a lot of Hughie, pal. He always trusted me. Well, don't blame me if I'm lucky.
He collects the dice in his hand thoughtfully.
You know, it's time I quit carrying the torch for Hughie. Now, what's the use? Don't do him no good. He's gone. Like we all gotta go. Him yesterday. Me and you tomorrow. Who cares? What's the difference? It's all in the racket, huh?
His soul is purged of grief. His confidence is restored.
I shoot 2 bits.
Manfully, with an excited deadpan expression, the night clerk hopes resembles Arnold Rothstein's.
I fade you.
Here he throws the dice.
Ah! 4's my point!
He gathers them up swiftly and throws them again.
What it is!
He takes the money.
Easy when you got my luck and know-how. Huh, Charlie.
Erie chuckles, giving the night clerk the sly, amused, contemptuous, affectionate wink with which a wise guy regales a sucker. Curtain the end.